What if everything you've been taught about prayer has actually been keeping you separated from the very miracles you're desperately seeking? I know that sounds almost blasphemous, maybe even dangerous to suggest, but stay with me until the end of this video because what you're about to discover could completely transform the way you experience divine presence in your life. For years, perhaps even decades, you've approached God the same way. You've bowed your head, closed your eyes, and begun listing everything you need. Healing for that persistent condition, financial breakthrough for those mounting bills, clarity for that impossible decision, peace for that anxious mind. And you've done it with such sincerity, such desperation, pouring your heart out in those quiet moments or crying out loud when the pain became unbearable. You've been faithful, you've been persistent, you've believed with everything in you. But here's what nobody talks about in church, what spiritual teachers rarely address directly. Has this ever happened to you? The more intensely you pray for something, the more distant the answer seems to become. You plead for peace, and your anxiety somehow intensifies. You beg for clarity, and the confusion deepens. You cry out for provision, and the lack feels even more suffocating. It's like you're pushing against an invisible wall, and the harder you push, the more solid it becomes. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, there's something happening beneath the surface of all this striving and asking that most people never recognize. Every time you approach God from a place of desperate need, every time you formulate another request, another petition, another plea, you're unconsciously broadcasting a very specific message into the universe. When you pray for healing, you're declaring, "I am sick." When you beg for financial breakthrough, you're affirming, "I am in lack." When you ask for peace, you're announcing, "I am in turmoil." The paradox is almost cruel in its simplicity. The very act of asking reinforces the exact condition you're trying to escape. Your consciousness becomes locked in a loop, constantly focused on what you don't have, what isn't working, what's missing from your life. And the universe, responding to the frequency you're broadcasting rather than the words you're speaking, continues to mirror that lack back to you. What you're about to discover might challenge everything you thought you knew about spiritual practice, about prayer, about your relationship with the divine. Because there's another way, a hidden path that the mystics and spiritual masters have walked for centuries. A way that doesn't involve more asking, more begging, more desperate petitioning. Instead, it involves something that might sound completely counterintuitive, maybe even a little frightening at first. It involves letting go of your own thinking entirely and allowing something far greater than your individual consciousness to think through you instead. This is the hidden truth that spiritual masters across every tradition have discovered, often after years of struggling with the same desperate prayers, the same unanswered petitions. They found that the most powerful state of being isn't asking God for anything at all. It's not about finding the right words, the perfect formula, or the most passionate plea. The transformation happens in a completely different dimension of consciousness altogether. What they discovered was this: when you surrender every thought you have, when you release your grip on trying to figure everything out, you create space for divine intelligence to literally become your mind, not your helper, standing beside you, not some cosmic assistant responding to your requests from a distance, but your actual thinking, your awareness, your consciousness itself. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this isn't just some mystical concept meant to sound profound. This is a practical shift that changes how you navigate every single decision, every challenge, every moment of your day. Imagine what would happen if you stopped approaching life with that constant mental chatter, that endless internal dialogue, trying to calculate outcomes, predict consequences, control variables. Your mind has been running these strategies for so long that you probably don't even notice it anymore. It's become background noise, this perpetual attempt to manage reality with your limited human thinking. But here's what happens when you release that grip, when you stop trying to be the architect of your own breakthrough and instead open yourself to receive divine intelligence flowing through you. As naturally as breath flows through your lungs, as effortlessly as your heart beats, without you having to consciously direct it. There's a shift in your entire energetic field. The anxiety that was always humming beneath the surface starts to quiet. The desperation that colored every prayer begins to dissolve, and in that space, something extraordinary becomes possible. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join this community of seekers exploring what it means to live from divine intelligence rather than anxious human thinking. You start making decisions from a completely different place, not from fear about what might happen if you choose wrong, not from desperate attempts to force outcomes, but from a quiet knowing that emerges when your own frantic thinking steps aside. Opportunities that were always there, but invisible to your cluttered consciousness, suddenly appear right in front of you. Revelations come not through your straining and struggling, but through simple receptivity. This is the journey from human striving to divine flow, from the exhausting burden of trying to control everything to the grace of allowing infinite wisdom to guide your path. Behind the scenes of this practice, your whole relationship with existence transforms. The impact shows up in ways you can actually measure, actually experience in your daily reality. Write, "I'm ready to receive" in the comments if this is resonating with something deep inside you. Because here's the revelation that changes everything about how you approach divine connection. The abundance you're seeking, the guidance you're desperately trying to access, the healing you've been begging for, the love you think is being withheld from you. None of it is locked away somewhere waiting for you to say the magic words or prove yourself worthy. It's flowing toward you right now, in this exact moment, like a perpetual stream that has never stopped, not even for a single second. The problem isn't that God is ignoring your prayers or testing your faith with divine silence. The problem is far more practical than that, and understanding it completely transforms your entire spiritual journey. Your consciousness is tuned to the wrong frequency. Think about it like this. Imagine there's a radio station broadcasting the most extraordinary music throughout the entire universe. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never pausing, never fading. This broadcast has been playing since before you were born and will continue long after you're gone. The music is always there, the signal is always strong, the transmission is always perfect. Now here's the crucial question that determines your entire experience. Is whether the music exists? No, the music is definitely there. The real question is this: are you tuned in to receive it? When you turn your radio dial to static, the music doesn't stop broadcasting. The signal doesn't weaken. The station doesn't go offline waiting for you to find. It continues playing exactly as it always has. You're simply not positioned to hear it. This is precisely what happens in your spiritual life every single day. Divine intelligence is constantly transmitting solutions to your problems, opportunities for breakthrough, wisdom for your decisions, revelations about your path. The broadcast never stops. But when your mind is cluttered with fear-based thinking, when you're operating from that frantic energy of desperate asking, when your consciousness is dominated by anxious thoughts about what you lack and how to get it, you're essentially tuned to static. The interference is so loud, so overwhelming, that you can't perceive what's already being transmitted directly to you. Behind the scenes, this creates a pattern that most people live with their entire lives without ever recognizing it. They keep asking louder, praying harder, trying different techniques and formulas, all while remaining on the wrong frequency. The transformation they're seeking isn't about convincing God to finally send what they need. It's about adjusting their own consciousness to receive what's already being given. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding how to make that frequency shift, how to actually tune yourself to divine transmission, is where the real impact happens. Type tuning in if you're beginning to see how this works. And this is where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves without even realizing it. When you're stuck in that constant mode of asking, petitioning, pleading with God to please give you what you need, something happens at an energetic level that's actually working against everything you're trying to achieve. Your entire being begins vibrating with the frequency of lack. Every desperate prayer, no matter how sincere, carries an underlying current that's broadcasting a very specific message into the universe. I am incomplete. I am broken. I am separate from what I need. Think about how this shows up in your daily experience. You approach someone from a place of desperate neediness, and they instinctively pull back. You relate to opportunities from scarcity consciousness, and they seem to evaporate. It's not because the universe is cruel or God is punishing you. It's simply the law of resonance at work. The energy you're putting out is being mirrored back to you with mathematical precision. When you're vibrating at the frequency of I don't have, life responds by giving you more experiences of not having. This vibration of lack actually pushes away the very things you're reaching for, like trying to grasp water with clenched fists. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. But here's where the transformation becomes possible, where the entire game changes in ways that can feel almost miraculous once you experience it. When you surrender your thoughts and let God be your mind. When you stop generating that desperate asking energy and instead simply open yourself to receive, you create an entirely different energetic reality. The shift is subtle at first, but the impact is profound. Instead of broadcasting lack, you begin resonating with fullness. Instead of separation consciousness, you start embodying union with the divine source itself. There's a quiet confidence that settles into your being when this happens, and it's important to understand what this confidence actually is. It's not ego, it's not arrogance or false bravado. It's something far deeper, far more authentic. It's the recognition of a truth that has always been there, waiting for you to notice it. What God has, I have. What God is, I am. This isn't blasphemy. This is the most humble acknowledgement possible, because you're finally understanding that your good doesn't come from your own efforts, your own thinking, your own clever strategies. It flows through you as divine expression, as naturally and effortlessly as rivers flow to the ocean. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but experiencing how this mindset shift actually shows up in real situations, in daily decisions, in the practical challenges you face, that's where everything becomes tangible and real. Drop divine flow in the comments if you're starting to feel this shift happening inside you. Because the beautiful truth about this entire transformation is that it doesn't require elaborate rituals, years of spiritual training, or some special initiation into secret knowledge. The shift begins with something so simple that most people dismiss it as too easy to be effective. Just 10 minutes of your day. That's all. 10 minutes where you stop approaching spirituality like you're placing an order at a restaurant, rattling off your list of needs and demands to some cosmic waiter who may or may not bring what you asked for. Instead, you sit quietly, in whatever way feels natural to you, and you say 1. simple thing within yourself. I'm now open to receive all that God is giving me. Notice what's not happening in that statement. There's no begging involved, no bargaining with promises of better behavior if you just get what you want. No desperate pleading for specific outcomes. You're not trying to convince God to finally pay attention to your needs or manipulate reality through sheer force of will. You're simply acknowledging something that has always been true. Divine supply is already flowing toward you, and you're opening your consciousness to receive it. This mindset shift might seem subtle, but behind the scenes, it's completely revolutionary. You're moving from the exhausting energy of pushing and forcing and striving to the natural flow of receiving. Think about how effortlessly the earth receives rain. Does it strain? Does it worry whether the clouds will open? Does it create complicated strategies to make the precipitation happen? No. It simply remains receptive. And when the rain falls, it receives. Your lungs don't beg for air. They breathe in the oxygen that's already surrounding you. A flower doesn't manufacture sunlight through determination. It turns toward the sun and receives what's being offered. This is what happens when you practice those 10 minutes each day. You're not forcing visualizations while your mind screams that it won't work. You're not straining through affirmations while secretly doubting every word. You're not white-knuckling your way through some spiritual technique. You're simply being receptive, creating space for revelations and intuitive wisdom to emerge naturally, like spring water bubbling up from an underground source that was always there waiting to be tapped. This is the transformation from exhausting struggle to effortless grace, from the burden of trying to control every outcome with your limited human thinking to the freedom of letting infinite wisdom think through you. And the impact accumulates with each day you practice. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what happens when you actually start living this way, when it moves from theory into your real daily experience, reveals dimensions most people never discover. Right, opening to receive, if you're ready to make this practice part of your journey. Let me share something with you that demonstrates exactly what this looks like when someone actually makes this shift in their real life, facing real challenges that feel impossible to overcome. There was a woman named Maria who spent 3 years praying for financial breakthrough with an intensity that was almost violent. Every night she would literally shake her fists at heaven, demanding answers, begging God to fix her mounting debt and dwindling bank account. She filled journals with prayer requests, attended every prosperity teaching she could find, declared affirmations until her voice went hoarse. But here's what she noticed. The more desperately she asked, the worse her situation became. It was like watching someone try to catch water with clenched fists. The tighter she gripped, the faster it slipped away. When Maria discovered this teaching about receptivity, about surrendering thoughts and letting God be your mind, her first reaction was fear. If I stop asking, God will completely forget about me, she thought. But desperation had brought her to a breaking point where she was willing to try anything. She committed to 30 days of practicing differently. Each morning and evening, she would sit quietly, release all those anxious calculations about how to fix her finances, and simply open herself to receive divine supply without demanding specific outcomes. The transformation didn't happen overnight. The first 2 weeks felt brutal. Nothing seemed to be changing externally, and internally she felt empty, almost frightened by the silence. But behind the scenes, something profound was shifting in her energy field. That constant knot of anxiety that had lived in her chest for 3 years began loosening its grip. Her sleep improved. Her decisions became clearer, less driven by panic. By week 3, the impact started showing up in tangible ways. An unexpected freelance opportunity appeared through an old contact she hadn't heard from in years. A debt she thought was permanent got mysteriously forgiven through a company restructuring. A refund check she'd completely forgotten about arrived in the mail. None of these things came from her, striving or strategizing. They emerged naturally as she stopped blocking the flow with her desperate asking. Then there's David, who battled chronic illness for 5 years, while his prayer life became an exhausting cycle of begging and bargaining. The turning point in his journey came when he surrendered his thoughts about his condition entirely. Instead of fighting his symptoms with anxious mental strategies, he opened himself daily to receive perfect health as his divine inheritance. Within a year, his doctors used words like spontaneous remission. David had a different name for it, learning to let God be his mind. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because these stories reveal something crucial about how divine intelligence operates when we step aside and allow it to work through us. Type "I surrender" if these transformations are resonating with your own experience. But perhaps the most challenging territory where this principle reveals its power is in relationships, where the temptation to control outcomes feels almost irresistible. There's a woman named Jennifer whose story takes this into the most difficult dimension of human experience. For years, she had been on her knees praying the same desperate prayer every single night. Please change my husband, make him understand me, fix our communication, transform him into the partner I need. Every prayer was focused outward, asking God to manipulate someone else, to force external circumstances to align with what she thought would make her happy. What Jennifer didn't realize was that this entire approach was reinforcing the very separation she was trying to heal. Her asking was broadcasting a message into the universe with every petition. I am incomplete. He is wrong. We are broken. When she encountered this teaching on receptivity, something inside her resisted immediately. If I stop asking God to fix my marriage, it will definitely fall apart, she thought. But her current strategy clearly wasn't working, so she decided to experiment with a radically different approach. Instead of trying to control her husband or manipulate outcomes with her thoughts, she practiced receiving divine love into her own consciousness. Each morning, she would sit quietly, surrendering all her judgments about what he should be doing differently, opening herself simply to receive God's love without conditions or demands. The transformation started so subtly, she almost didn't notice it at first. She found herself responding to him differently, less reactive when he said things that used to trigger her, more peaceful in situations that previously sparked conflict, genuinely more loving without forcing it or pretending. Behind the scenes, as she let God be her mind instead of operating from her own anxious thinking, the entire relationship dynamic began shifting. He started responding differently too, not because she was manipulating him, but because the energy she was bringing into their interactions had fundamentally changed. This reveals something crucial about how divine intelligence works. When you transform your own consciousness, you change the field that everyone around you is responding to. And this brings us to what most people get completely wrong about spiritual practice when facing any challenge in life. The automatic response, when something goes wrong, is to identify the problem and then ask God to fix it. You focus intensely on the condition, analyzing every detail of what's broken, and then you petition God to come in and change it. But the breakthrough comes when you realize something revolutionary. You don't treat the condition at all. You treat your consciousness instead. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this distinction transforms how you approach every challenge that shows up in your path. Put treating consciousness in the comments if this is making sense to you. When you actually begin practicing this way, when you start surrendering your thoughts and letting God be your mind, there's a persistent feeling that overwhelms almost everyone who takes this journey. It's the uncomfortable sensation that you're doing absolutely nothing. And this feeling can be so intense, so unsettling, that it drives most people right back to their old patterns of asking, striving, and controlling. Because asking feels active, doesn't it? It feels powerful. It feels like you're taking charge, making things happen, being responsible for your life. Receiving, on the other hand, feels passive, lazy, almost irresponsible. Your ego starts screaming at you. You have to think. You have to figure this out. You can't just sit there doing nothing. You have to make something happen. But here's the revelation that changes everything. That uncomfortable feeling of doing nothing is actually a sign that you're making real progress. What you're experiencing is the dissolution of your habitual interference with divine flow. For your entire life, you've been operating under the assumption that you have to make everything happen through your own thinking and effort. You've been trained to believe that if you're not actively strategizing, calculating, and forcing outcomes, nothing will work. Now you're learning to step aside, and it feels completely foreign, maybe even frightening. Yet behind the scenes, something profoundly active is taking place when you surrender. You're not being passive at all. You're being receptive, which is incredibly powerful in the spiritual dimension. You're allowing infinite intelligence to think through you, to guide your decisions, to orchestrate circumstances in ways your limited human mind could never conceive. This is where the ultimate transformation happens, the shift that goes deeper than any technique or practice, because the hidden truth about your actual identity changes the entire game. You are not a separate human being disconnected from God, trying to get things from an external deity who may or may not respond to your requests. You are the very consciousness of God, receiving awareness of your own infinite nature. When you let God be your mind, you're not getting something new that you didn't have before. You're removing the veil that has been blocking your recognition of what has always been yours. You're not becoming spiritual through effort and practice. You're recognizing the spirituality that has always been your essential nature, just covered over by layers of false identification and separation consciousness. God has never stopped living through you. Divine intelligence has been flowing through your consciousness since before you were born. The only obstacle was your unawareness of this eternal truth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when you actually start living from this awareness, when it moves from concept to daily experience, your entire relationship with existence transforms. Right, I am divine consciousness. If this truth is beginning to awaken in you, if you've made it this far with me, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you've stayed through this entire exploration tells me you're genuinely ready for this shift in consciousness. You're not just casually browsing spiritual content. You're actively seeking the transformation that comes from letting God think through you, from surrendering the exhausting burden of trying to control everything with your limited human mind. I create these videos because I truly believe these insights have the power to change lives, not through my words, but through the eternal truths they point toward. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love for you to join this community of seekers who are learning to move from separation consciousness to divine receptivity. Hit that subscribe button so you can continue this journey with us, because each video explores another dimension of what it means to live from divine intelligence rather than anxious human thinking. And here's what would mean the world to me. Drop a comment below saying, "This message was meant for me, so I know you were here, that you received this, that something shifted in you as we walked through this together." Your presence in this community matters more than you realize. A gentle tap on the like button helps this teaching reach others who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. It's a small gesture that creates ripples far beyond what we can see. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how to practically live from this consciousness in your daily life. Click on it, and let's continue this conversation together. I'll meet you there.